Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Proctor of One Campfire, and I'm here today talking with Eli Hall, and we're going to discuss how to make water pure to drink in the backcountry. Thanks for coming, Eli.
Yeah, thanks. Happy to be here.
So as far as water goes in the backcountry, what are the types of things we need to worry about?
Well, you know, the reason that we are interested in treating water in the backcountry in general is to prevent waterborne illness. And there's three main categories of microbes that can cause that. At least, you know, and I think this talk is geared mostly towards backcountry users in North America. Other places in the world will have other things of concern, but here we're talking about protozoa, bacteria, and to a lesser extent viruses.
Right. What are some examples of the protozoa? I know that's probably the biggest threat for most backcountry users.
Yeah. I think, you know, the probably the two biggest things of concern are Giardia and something called Cryptosporidium.
Okay.
Yeah, and then bacteria can also be a concern. Those are something else we're watching for. But all these things can cause, you know, diarrhea, cramping, fever. So, you know, things you really do want to avoid if you can. For
sure. So, what do we do about it?
Well, treating all surface water is the best thing to do about it. And I would say there's for most backcountry purposes, there's 4 different options for treating. One is boiling your water. 2 is treating your water with a filter. 3 would be some sort of chemical disinfection, either tablets or droplets. And the 4th option would be a UV purification system.
Okay. What would be the advantages and disadvantages of those different systems?
Well, the advantage of boiling is that it's easy and it's simple and it doesn't require any extra stuff. You know, you can either boil it in a campfire or you can boil it with a stove that you probably have with you anyway. And it's also very effective against all different types of microbes.
So if somebody's going to go that route, how long do they need to boil the water to make it safe?
The standard recommendation is a rolling boil for at least 1 minute. Okay. But it also depends a bit on your altitude. The higher your altitude, the lower your boiling temperature. So you might want to err on the side of boiling a little bit longer if you're up really high.
Okay.
And as far as disadvantages of boiling is, you know, number one, it takes a long time, and it also uses a lot of fuel if you're doing it with a stove, which means extra weight.
Right.
Another disadvantage is hot water. You know, it's you end up drinking a lot of really warm hot water.
Right. Either you wait for hours for cold water or you drink warm water.
Yeah, exactly. And then taste is another thing. I find it always kind of gets a metallic taste from the pot, and also, you know, whatever stuff you've been cooking that pot if you're cooking with the same pot. So those are some of the disadvantages for boiling.
Okay, and so boiling is an option though, and what other options do we have?
Another option is filtering. That's what I used to do almost all the time. Was a filter. The advantages for that is they're very effective against the protozoa, against the Giardia and Cryptosporidium, because those are the largest microbes, so they're the easiest to pick out with a filter. Another advantage is it can also help pull out any sediment. You know, you're getting any chunks or floaters or silt out of the water. Another advantage is that if you're dealing with really small water sources, like in the desert, then you can just drop your line in there and pump it out. That's another nice thing.
So what would be a disadvantage of using a pump?
Disadvantages of a filter system: number one, they're heavy. That's the main thing I don't like about them. You know, you got to carry a big, heavy filter, and it's kind of a hassle. It takes quite a bit of time to pump water. That's probably the other thing I don't like about it.
Okay, so we've talked about boiling and filtering, and you mentioned
chemical disinfection.
So, you know, tell us about that.
Yeah, the biggest advantage there is that it's really, really light. And so if I'm doing an ultralight trip, I will just take tablets. So that's the biggest advantage in my opinion. The other advantage is it's easy. There's no hassle. You know,
Pretty hard to mess that up, I guess.
Yeah, you just fill up
follow
your
the
water
directions.
bottle,
Yeah.
put it in there. Usually you shake it up and wait 30 minutes, and then you have water to drink. As far as disadvantages, most of them don't treat cryptosporidium very effectively, and that's one of the bigger things that we're concerned about. Some tablets do treat crypto, but the ones that do, you have to usually wait 4 hours, which can be
So
fairly
that might not be
impractical.
practical,
Yeah.
That makes sense. And the last would be UV sterilization.
Yeah, so the thing I like the most about that is that it's very easy. There's no pumping involved. Your water tastes great because you're just drinking it, fresh out of the creek. You just fill up your water bottle. You have your little UV disinfection wand, and you put it in there and swirl it around until the light goes off. And so you've got great tasting water, and there's no pumping involved. So those, I would say, are the main advantages.
Yeah. And any disadvantages?
The disadvantage would be durability. It's a piece of electronics that's in the backcountry. I've been on a couple trips where they've stopped working, so that's one disadvantage. The other disadvantage is it relies on batteries, so you always want to make sure you have backup batteries. Another disadvantage is it doesn't take out any of the sediment, any of the floaters and things like that.
Now, if the only water you could find was quite silty, looked like chocolate milk, would UV sterilization, like a SteriPen, would that still work?
Probably not. Probably wouldn't be your best option. For it to be effective, you really want the UV to be able to penetrate all the water. So if it's really silty and muddy, probably not your best option.
Right. Okay. So I guess the one thing we haven't talked about is the other means of chemical purification of water. This is a pretty solid way to make water drinkable, would you say?
Yeah, about 40% alcohol, that'll do it.
I think the important thing to keep in mind with this is that you don't dilute this very much with water. It still needs to be fairly concentrated in order to ensure that the water is pure.
Good point. The other thing I would add with this is you really want to avoid carrying it yourself. It's best if you can somehow slip it into the hunting pack of your partner.
Yeah, and actually I think I recall that we went on a backpacking trip and my pack did seem heavier than normal, but I thought I was tired that day, and when I unrolled my sleeping bag, a bottle of whiskey fell out that I didn't know I was carrying.
Weird.
And so that's a good way for you to get your chemical purification without having to pack.
I don't remember anything about that.
Yeah,
but I'll take your word for it.
All right, so we've gone over the different ways to make water drinkable in the backcountry. We've talked about boiling water, pumping with a filter, chemical sterilization, and UV sterilization. So there are quite a few tools you can use to make drinking water safe in the backcountry, and with a little time and preparation you can decide what's going to be best for you and your situation. And I mean, you can always risk drinking untreated water, but with this technology that's available today to make water safe to drink, there's no reason for it. Anyway, I'd like to thank Eli for joining me, and on behalf of One Campfire, I hope everybody has a great summer and safe travels in the backcountry.